I came to with a silver chain halfway around my wrist, and a man I had never met smiling like he had already counted my bones as profit. For one terrifying second, I thought I was back in the conference room on the 39th floor, staring down a hostile acquisition agreement while 3 executives pretended they had read page 1. Then the smell hit me. Hot wax, old vellum, burned manna, winter roses rotting in silver bowls. Not earth. Not my office. Not my body. My name was Damaris Thorn. I was 17 years old, the illegitimate daughter of House Thorn, and apparently I had just reincarnated into a noble contract hall at the exact moment my family was selling me. A woman in emerald court robes fastened the engagement chain tighter. The links were delicate, pretty, and enchanted enough to make my pulse stumble. Across the oath table stood Lord Edran Voss, blonde, handsome, 21, and smiling with the soft confidence of a man who had never been told no by anyone he could not bankrupt. Beside him stood my half-brother, Merrick Thorn. The body's memories crashed into me so hard my knees nearly folded. Merrick's hand around my wrist 2 nights earlier, a forged consent mark, my father's seal pressed onto a contract I had never read, Lord Edran's promise that marriage would restore my standing. The truth hidden beneath it. He wanted the obsidian mine my mother had left me, and once he had it, he would have me declared unstable and sent to the convent at Northmere before the first winter snow. I had been a contract lawyer in my previous life. A tired one, a cynical one, the sort who could spot a poison pill clause from 4 pages away and smell misrepresentation through decorative font. And now I was standing in a magical world where contracts were written on oath paper and enforced by mana seals. The nobles called them sacred tradition. I looked down at the document glowing between us. No, they were badly drafted legal weapons. And somehow, every single person in that hall had handed one to the wrong girl. Lord Edran tilted his head. "Lady Damaris, you look pale." That was generous. I felt like someone had poured 2 lifetimes into one skull and shaken it. Behind me, my father cleared his throat. "Do not embarrass House Thorn." Embarrass. That word did something sharp inside my chest. The old Damaris had been raised on that word. She had been made small with it, quiet with it, hungry with it. She had been told that illegitimate daughters should be grateful for any place at the table, even if the table had a leash built into it. I touched the chain at my wrist. It hummed. The oath table reacted to my skin. Lines of silver script rose from the contract, elegant and predatory. Article 1, Marriage Alliance. Article 2, Transfer of Mineral Oversight. Article 3, Fitness Certification. Article 4, Custodial Authority if deemed unstable. Oh, they had been busy. My father stood to my left in a black fur mantle, expression carved from disappointment. To my right, Merrick watched me with the faintest smirk. He had my father's legitimate name, my father's legitimate bloodline, and my mother's mine in his sights. "Say your consent," Merrick murmured. "It is only 1 sentence." Only 1 sentence. I almost laughed. In my old life, people ruined companies with 1 sentence. Noble contract halls were built like temples, tall windows, blue glass, marble floors veined with mana. 7 witnesses sat along the side benches. 3 contract mages stood behind the oath table in gray robes, each carrying a brass verification rod. None of them looked at me like a person. They looked at me like a signature. That helped. Panic became anger. Anger became focus. I leaned closer to the oath paper. The script shimmered. The letters were not English, not any language I should have understood, but this body knew them. More than that, my previous life knew what to do with them. Definitions, conditions, remedies, severability, representations, warranties, enforcement gaps. Clause 12 used mining rights. Clause 13 used mineral ownership. Clause 16 used operational stewardship. 3 different terms for the same asset, probably on purpose. The kind of drafting that let the stronger party claim whatever meaning benefited them later. Amateur work. Expensive amateur work, but still amateur. Something cold moved under my skin. A thin silver line appeared in my right wrist, just beneath the engagement chain. I froze. No one else reacted. The line slid up the inside of my arm like moonlight underwater. Not painful, not exactly, more like a nerve waking after years of sleep. The body's memories supplied the humiliation. Damaris Thorn had failed every cultivation test. No sword aura. No elemental mana. No blessing response. No flame affinity, no frost affinity, no beast resonance, no spirit root worth nomming. House Thorn had called her dull iron. Merrick preferred dead branch. But the silver line pulsed when I looked back at the contract. Clause contradiction identified. A thought formed in my mind, not as a voice, not as a system notification, but as an understanding so precise it felt carved into bone. Oath accepted precision. I swallowed. So that was it. This world cultivated power through channels, meridians, elemental circulation, battle forms, and family techniques. My soul had decided to build a legal department. Lord Edran's smile thinned. Is there a problem? I looked at him, then at Merrick. There were at least 19 problems on the first 2 pages alone. But if I refused outright, my father would drag me home, Merrick would forge a cleaner consent mark, and Edran would get another chance to revise. I needed them confident. I needed them careless. I needed them to sign something they thought they understood. So I lowered my eyes, because that was what they expected from Damaris Thorn. I only have one small clarification. Merrick exhaled like I had wasted the kingdom's oxygen. My father's jaw tightened. Edran gave a little laugh. Of course, ask anything. A bride should feel safe. A bride. I almost missed Earth in that moment. Not because Earth was fair. It was. But at least nobody there pretended a hostile takeover was romance. I lifted my chained wrist and pointed to Clause 12. The contract says Lord Voss assumes stewardship of the obsidian mine upon registration, but Clause 15 says House Thorn warrants clear transfer authority. If any party misrepresented ownership, debt, title condition, curse burden, mineral encumbrance, prior contamination, or regulatory liability, who assumes the attached penalties? Silence fell so hard, I could hear wax dripping from a candle. One of the gray-robed contract mages blinked. Merrick stared at me as if a chair had asked about tax exposure. Lord Edran recovered first. That is standard language. No, I said softly. It is missing standard language. The second silver line formed along my forearm. I nearly smiled. Edran's eyes flicked to my wrist, then away. He could see the engagement chain. He could not see what was growing beneath it. My father stepped forward. Damaris, enough. I turned to him. I am only protecting House Thorn from accidental liability. That stopped him. Noblemen loved 3 things: bloodline, ceremony, and not being personally liable for anything. Merrick's smirk returned. Then add whatever little sentence comforts you. There it was. The opening. A clerk approached with an amendment blade and a narrow strip of oath paper. Her name, according to the body's memory, was Tavia Wren, 19, junior scribe, quiet, ink-stained fingers, daughter of a dismissed contract mage, the sort of girl nobles ignored until they needed someone to blame. She did not look at me with pity. She looked worried. That mattered. I held out my hand. May I draft it? Merrick laughed. You. Lord Edran spread his hands. Let her, if it calms her nerves. The hall laughed politely. Tavia did not. She placed the amendment strip before me and passed over the silver quill. The moment I touched it, something in my pocket went warm. I looked down. A ring sat on my smallest finger. Cracked black seal stone, tarnished silver, ugly by noble standards, important by instinct. My mother's ring. The body's memories showed Damaris hiding it under her pillow, touching it when she cried, defending it when Merrick called it grave trash. The cracked seal ring pulsed once. The oath paper changed. Not visibly to the hall. Only to me. A fine shimmer appeared over every clause, and beneath that shimmer, small silver threads ran toward the person each clause benefited. Clause 4, Edran. Clause 5, Edran. Clause 7, Merrick. Clause 12, Edran and Merrick. Clause 17, House Thorn, but only if Damaris disappeared quietly. My breath caught. Countersignature key. The phrase came from somewhere between my two lives, a relic used by original grantors to inspect beneficiary flow before sealing an oath. Obsolete, forgotten, probably illegal in 3 provinces. The ring did not tell me everything. It did not reveal hidden documents. It did not rewrite terms. It did not make me powerful. It only showed who benefited. To a lawyer, that was enough to start a war. I bent over the amendment strip and wrote in a careful hand. Any party who has misrepresented, concealed, transferred, induced transfer of, or claimed authority over the mine or its associated rights shall personally assume all historical liabilities, remedial burdens, fines, curse debts, contamination penalties, and criminal oath consequences attached to said mine, without recourse to Lady Damaris Thorn or her maternal estate. 29 words in the original legal tongue. 47 in my head. A third silver line formed, wrapping around my elbow. My vision sharpened. The hall became a map of risks. Every seal, every witness, every weak link. Tavia read the amendment as she dried the ink. For one heartbeat, her face changed. Not much, just enough. She understood something was wrong with the original contract. Maybe not all of it, but enough. She glanced at me. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. Merrick snatched the strip, scanned it, and scoffed. Historical liabilities. The mine is a hole in the mountain. It barely produces enough black glass to pay for candles. Lord Edran's smile stayed perfect, but his eyes paused on the words curse debts and contamination. Only for half a second. That half-second saved my life. Because fear means knowledge. He knew something. He signed anyway. Merrick signed after him, pressing the Thorn signet so hard the paper smoked. My father signed as approving guardian. The contract mages sealed the amendment into the main agreement with 3 taps of brass rods. The oath table flared blue. The engagement chain tightened. And deep in my chest, where ordinary cultivators would have formed a mana seed, a thin ring of silver light began to close. Not a core. Not yet. But the beginning of one. Edran leaned close enough for me to smell mint wine on his breath. There, he whispered, that was painless. I looked at the signed amendment. Not for everyone. They gave me 48 hours before the royal registration ceremony. That was noble kindness, for we need time to hide the paperwork. The contract was not fully enforceable until registered at the Royal Archive of Oaths. Until then, it bound intent but not transfer. The engagement chain could restrain me from fleeing the capital, refusing ceremony, or publicly accusing Edran without proof. It could not stop me from reading. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was assuming Damaris Thorn had never been taught anything useful. To be fair, the old Damaris had been denied tutors after 12. She had learned etiquette, needlework, and how to stand still while legitimate relatives discussed her like furniture. But she had also spent 9 years in a manor full of arrogant people who spoke freely in front of her. Servants knew where documents were kept. Ignored girls knew who lied. And reincarnated lawyers knew that nobody commits a 12-year fraud without leaving a trail. I was escorted back to House Thorn in a carriage with 2 guards, 1 maid, and Merrick sitting opposite me like a smug gargoyle in blue velvet. He held a cup of pear wine and watched the silver chain on my wrist. "You surprised everyone today," he said. "That sounds like praise." "It is concern," he smiled. "Cleverness is dangerous in girls without position. I will try to be decorative instead." His smile faltered. Small victory. The chain warmed, warning me against material hostility toward the intended alliance. I breathed through it. Interesting. The contract punished open rebellion, not sarcasm. Important distinction. Marek leaned back. "Lord Edran is generous. You should be grateful. Most men would not take a bastard girl with no dowry but an exhausted mine. My mother's mine. Our family's mine." There was the lie. The ring pulsed. A silver thread connected the word family from his mouth to the sealed contract case beside him. Not evidence, not yet, but a direction. In law, direction mattered. At the manor, my father ordered me confined to the East guest suite for rest. That meant locked doors, 2 guards in the corridor, and a maid instructed to report every word. Unfortunately for them, the East guest suite had once belonged to my mother. The room was cold, pale curtains, cracked mirror, a writing desk with one short leg, snow pressed against the windows in soft gray sheets. The old Damaris had hated this room because it felt like a memorial. I loved it immediately. Memorials keep secrets. The maid assigned to me was named Lena, 14, nervous and clearly terrified of Marek. She brought soup, set it down without meeting my eyes, and whispered, "Please don't ask me anything, my lady." So I didn't. I asked the room instead. For 3 hours, I searched like someone billing by 6-minute increments. I checked floorboards, curtain rods, drawer linings, mirror frames, candle sconces, and the underside of the desk. My previous life apartment had been smaller than this suite, and I had once hidden emergency cash inside a broken air vent. Rich people always underestimated cheap hiding places. Behind the desk leg, I found a strip of black wax. Not documents. A seal impression. My mother's mark, a thorned crescent around a mountain. The ring grew warm. When I pressed it to the wax, silver lines crawled over the desk and gathered at the wall behind the bed. I dragged the bed aside. There was no dramatic secret door, just a loose stone at ankle height. Practical woman, my mother. Inside the hollow was a packet wrapped in oilcloth, 3 brittle letters, and a mineral rights certificate dated 17 years earlier. My hands shook when I unfolded it. Not because I was surprised. Because the old Damaris's heart recognized the seal. Lady Marin Vale, my mother, had not given the obsidian mine to House Thorn. She had placed it in a maternal estate trust for her daughter, Damaris, with House Thorn named only as temporary steward until Damaris reached 18 or contracted a marriage with equal or higher registered protection. That explained the rush. I was 17. My birthday was in 83 days. If they got me married before then, they could argue the transfer satisfied the trust condition. If they got me declared unstable after that, Edran could control the mine as husband and guardian. Disgusting. Legally coherent, but disgusting. A 4th silver line formed across my shoulder. I sat on the floor, surrounded by dust and dead woman's paperwork, and whispered, "Mother, you were better than all of them." The ring gave one soft pulse. Not an answer, but close enough. The letters were harder. One from my mother to a royal mining inspector. One from a healer asking about symptoms among workers. One from a clerk at the Obsidian Registry warning that House Voss had requested access to old survey tunnels near the Thorn boundary 12 years ago. 12 years. The concept from the prompt of memory, no, from Damaris's life, clicked into place. Edran Voss did not want the mine because it was exhausted. He wanted it because it was useful. Not for mining. For dumping. Cursed stone waste was a byproduct of refining war crystals. Dangerous, expensive to neutralize, and subject to royal disposal law. If House Voss had been dumping waste into my mother's old tunnels for 12 years, the cleanup debt would be catastrophic. And if they could make the mine legally mine, then legally Edran's through marriage, then legally abandoned under my unstable guardianship, the liability would vanish into a convent cell with me. I laughed once. It sounded ugly in the quiet room. Lena nearly dropped the tea tray when she returned. I covered the documents with my skirt and looked up. "Do you know Tavia Wren?" Her face went blank in the way servants. Faces go blank when the truth is dangerous. "I know many scribes by sight, my lady." That is a yes in servant grammar. Her mouth twitched before she could stop it. Good. A person who can still almost laugh is not completely owned. "I need a message sent to her," I said. Lena shook her head. "The guards search notes." "I am not sending a note." I took the mineral certificate and looked at the original grant number. 7 digits, 3 royal marks, 1 archive shelf code. I dipped a finger in tea and wrote the shelf code on the tabletop. The brown liquid faded as it cooled. "Ask her to bring me the winter prayer book from the South Archive. Use those exact words. If she is as clever as I think she is, she'll understand." Lena stared at the vanishing letters, then at my wrist chain, then at me. "Marek will dismiss me. Marek is going to have other concerns soon." That was the first moment she really looked at me. Not as House Thorn's unwanted daughter. As a person holding a lit match in a room full of dry paper. She took the tray and left. That night, I learned the cost of Claw's cultivation. It was not pain exactly. It was exhaustion with teeth. Every time I identified a precise legal flaw, silver mana strengthened a line in my meridians, but my body was still weak. 17 years of underfeeding, stress, and failed cultivation had left it fragile. After the 4th silver line, my hands trembled. After the 5th, my sight doubled. After the 6th, my heart beat in careful, angry counts. So I made rules. No more than 7 major interpretations per day. Water after every contract review. Food even if my stomach rebelled. Rest before ceremony. Earth had taught me many things, but the most useful was this. Burnout is not a personality trait. It is a liability. The next morning, Tavia arrived with 3 prayer books, 2 guards, and the expression of a woman delivering devotional literature to an idiot. "My lady," she said, curtsying, "your father thought spiritual reflection would calm you." The guard snickered. I clasped my hands. How thoughtful. Tavia set the books on my desk. The first was prayers. The second was also prayers. The third was a Royal Archive copybook with a prayer cover stitched over it. I wanted to hug her. I did not, because we both wanted to survive. When the guard stepped outside, Tavia spoke without moving her lips much. "You have 10 minutes. They think I'm checking your chain seal. Can you access Royal Archive mining records? I can request public index summaries." "Not enough." Her eyes sharpened. "What are you looking for?" "Waste disposal permits connected to House Voss, Obsidian Ridge, Thorn Mine, or adjacent survey tunnels. 12-year period. Also complaints from workers, healer notices, curse seepage reports, and fines that were appealed but not paid." Tavia went very still. Then she whispered, "That is not a marriage issue." "It is now." She looked at the chain around my wrist. "Lady Damaris, if you accuse House Voss without registered proof, the engagement chain can silence you. If you resist ceremony, it can bind your voice, hands, and steps. If Lord Edran has a fitness petition ready." "He does." Her face tightened. "Then at registration, he can request a stability review." "I know." "Do you?" "I used to draft contracts for people who smiled while moving knives under tables." Tavia stared. "Right, that sentence did not translate perfectly into this world." "I understand predatory agreements," I said. She accepted that, or decided not to question reincarnation before breakfast. "Why trust me?" she asked. Because you read the amendment yesterday and recognized a liability transfer. Because your father was dismissed from the contract Mage College after refusing to certify a forged oath. Because you hate bad paperwork more than you fear nobles. Her face lost color. The old Damaris had known that story from servant gossip. I had only sharpened it. Tavia looked toward the door, then back at me. 3 days ago, Lord Edran requested private archive access to Thorn mine boundary maps. He brought his own mage. They sealed 6 pages from public view. Can you unseal them? No. Can you prove they were sealed? She nodded slowly. A 7th silver line formed around my ribs. I gripped the desk until it passed. Tavia noticed. Are you ill? Developing professionally. I don't know what that means. Neither do I yet. The guards knocked. Tavia raised her voice. The chain seal is stable, my lady. Please avoid emotional disturbance. Of course, I said. As she gathered the fake prayer books, she slipped one thin archive token under my palm. A loyal ally does not need to storm a castle. Sometimes she gives you a shelf number and 10 minutes. After she left, I opened the copybook. Inside were index summaries. Not full evidence, but enough. House Voss had filed cursed stone disposal permits for 3 mines: Black Hollow, East Veyer, and Marrow Pit. All 3 were closed within 5 years. Yet their war crystal refinery had continued operating. Where did 12 years of waste go? Not into legal disposal sites. Not into royal neutralization pits. Not into taxed containment vaults. My mother's mine sat between Voss land and Thorn land, officially low-yield, poorly inspected, and managed by a weak steward family hungry for noble favor. Perfect dumping ground. I found worker complaints from 8 years ago: purple dust in tunnel seams, miners coughing black phlegm, not described graphically, just noted as curse residue symptoms. Livestock miscarriages near the lower creek. 3 petitions withdrawn after House Voss resolved matters privately. Resolved. I knew that word. It meant paid off, threatened, buried, or all 3. By sunset, I had my 2nd milestone. The first had been identifying contradictions. The 2nd was beneficiary mapping through my mother's ring. The 3rd came when I placed the archive token, the grant certificate, and the amendment copy together. The silver lines in my body joined at my sternum. For exactly 9 seconds, the room vanished. I saw the contract not as paper but as structure. Promises became beams. Definitions became hinges. Liabilities became weighted doors. Signatures became locks. And in the center, one unsupported load-bearing lie held everything together. House Thorn had authority to transfer the mine. It did not. Marek had forged my consent because he needed my name to cover that weakness. Edran had signed the amendment because he thought all liabilities would pass to me before anyone noticed. Both of them had signed as representing parties. Both had misrepresented ownership. Both were now standing under the falling ceiling. The silver ring in my chest closed. A tiny oath core formed. Small, cold, precise. Not powerful enough to throw fire. Not strong enough to win a duel. But when the engagement chain tried to tighten around my wrist that night, my oath core pushed back. One link cracked. Just a hairline fracture. I smiled at it in the dark. Objection sustained, I whispered. On the morning of registration, Marek brought me a white dress. Not a wedding dress. That would come later, assuming I survived the paperwork. This was a ceremonial contract gown, all lace cuffs and pearl buttons, designed to make girls look harmless in front of royal officials. I wore it because refusing would trigger the chain. I also wore my mother's ring. Marek noticed. Take that off. No. His brows rose. No. It is sentimental. It is ugly. So is fraud, but here we are. The chain burned cold. I smiled through it. Marek stepped closer. You think one day of cleverness changes anything. You have no patron, no cultivation, no legitimate claim anyone will honor without House Thorn. I have the contract. You have a cage. That depends on how well it was built. His face hardened. For a second, I saw the boy from the old Damaris's memories. 12 years old, hiding her shoes before winter chapel. 15, spilling ink on her lessons. 19, telling a visiting lord that she had spells of confusion whenever she answered too intelligently. Cruelty had been his practice, long before greed became his profession. You were always strange, he said. Mother said bastards carry instability in the blood. My mother negotiated better than yours. He slapped the desk with one hand. I did not flinch. That surprised both of us. Then he laughed softly. Enjoy your last morning pretending to matter. He left. Lena entered 2 minutes later with breakfast and eyes as round as saucers. You shouldn't provoke him. You are correct. You will continue. Also correct. She made a tiny sound that might have been despair. On the tray, beneath a folded napkin, was a scrap of blank paper. No message. Only a smear of gray dust. I touched it with the ring. Silver threads rose. Cursed stone residue. Tavia had found physical trace evidence. Not enough for a criminal conviction alone. Enough to justify royal inspection, if tied to a registered liability dispute. I ate every bite of breakfast. That may not sound dramatic, but trust me, eating before war is underrated. The Royal Archive of Oaths stood in the capital's old quarter, a building of black marble and white columns guarded by statues of blindfolded dragons. Every contract registered there became enforceable by Crown Mana. Marriage alliances, mine transfers, trade monopolies, inheritance trusts, debt bonds, guild charters. Noble apologies disguised as settlements, all fed into the same magical bureaucracy. A beautiful nightmare. I respected it immediately. Our carriage arrived at the third bell. The registration ceremony was public because Edran wanted spectacle. There were 40 witnesses in the outer hall, including Voss cousins, Thorn retainers, 3 minor nobles hungry for gossip, and 2 royal contract auditors who looked bored enough to be dangerous. Lord Edran stood at the center in silver-blue robes, his hair brushed back, his smile polished to a mirror shine. Beside him was Lady Usabet Voss, his aunt and family legal steward. Late 40s, sharp eyes, no smile. She worried me more than Edran. Pretty heirs signed things. Women like her buried the bodies. Metaphorically, I hoped. My father greeted Edran with formal warmth. Marek stood behind them, shining with triumph. I stood alone. That was deliberate. They wanted the image clear. Damaris transferred from Thorn control to Voss control under noble blessing. Tavia waited near the registrar's desk with a stack of oath ledgers. She did not look at me. Good. The high registrar entered exactly at the 4th bell. His name was Orlin Maeve, 72, bald, severe, and wearing the red sash of Crown authority. Behind him floated 6 verification seals, each the size of a dinner plate. He tapped one finger against the oath table. Marriage and mining alliance between House Voss and House Thorn, concerning Lady Damaris Thorn and Lord Edran Voss, with attached stewardship transfer over Obsidian Ridge Mine. Step forward. The chain pulled me. I stepped forward. Edran did too. The contract was unrolled on the table. My amendment glowed faintly in the lower margin. Still there. Thank you, careless arrogance. The registrar began the verification. Identity. The contract flared. Edran placed his hand down. Lord Edran Voss, first heir of Westmere Branch, authorized signatory. Blue light accepted him. I placed my hand down. Damaris Thorn, daughter of Marin Vale, registered beneficiary of the Vale Mineral Trust. Marek's head snapped toward me. My father went still. The registrar looked up. Edran's smile froze by 1 degree. Lady Usabit's eyes narrowed. The contract flared silver instead of blue. A murmur moved through the hall. Registrar Maeve adjusted his spectacles. The bride identifies under maternal trust status. I widened my eyes with all the innocence I had borrowed from court gowns. Is that incorrect, honored registrar? Marek stepped forward. A minor wording issue. She is House Thorn's daughter. Illegitimate daughter, I said helpfully, with maternal estate documents. The chain bit into my wrist. My oath core pulsed. The bite eased. Marek stared at the chain, as if it had betrayed him personally. The registrar held out a hand. Documents. My father said, "This is unnecessary." Registrar Maeve did not even glance at him. That was not a request. I placed my mother's mineral certificate on the table. The hall changed. Not loudly. Powerful rooms rarely explode. They tighten. The registrar examined the certificate for 37 seconds. I counted. Then he held it over the contract. The crown seals rotated. One turned white. Authentic, he said. My father's face lost warmth. Marek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Edran laughed lightly. A charming discovery. Of course, the contract contemplates transfer through marriage protection. Lady Usabit gave him a look that clearly meant stop speaking. Too late. The registrar turned to the contract. Then the court must verify whether House Thorn possessed authority to warrant transfer. Marek recovered. House Thorn served as steward for 17 years. Stewardship is not ownership, I said. Another silver line, strengthened in my core. The registrar looked at me. For the first time, he seemed interested. Edran stepped closer, lowering his voice. Damaris, this is embarrassing your family. It is only registration. You do not understand the machinery you are touching. That almost made me laugh. Men like him always thought the machine belonged to them because nobody had ever asked them to read the manual. The registrar tapped the contract. The amendment entered 48 hours ago imposes personal liability for misrepresentation of ownership, title condition, contamination, curse debt, and related penalties. He looked over his spectacles at Marek. Who drafted this amendment? I did, I said. The hall murmured again. Lady Usabit's expression went from sharp to lethal. Edran's charm finally cracked. Marek forced a laugh. It was a harmless comfort clause. The mine has no liabilities. Excellent, I said. The word landed like a coin, dropped into a well. I touched my mother's ring to the contract. The cracked black seal stone drank the room's light. For a second, nothing happened. Then every clause lifted off the page in silver threads. Gasps echoed through the hall. The threads stretched from the contract toward the people who benefited. Most ran to Edran. Several to Marek. 2 to my father. One thin thread, almost hidden, ran to Lady Usabit. The registrar stood so quickly his chair scraped stone. Counter-signature key. Lady Usabit went pale. Edran whispered, impossible. Sentimental junk, I said. Apparently. The ring burned cold. My oath core answered. My sight sharpened until I could see beneficiary lines layered over the contract like a litigation chart from hell. Clause 4 gave Edran custodial authority if I was deemed unstable. Clause 5 allowed him to appoint the examining healer. Clause 6 reimbursed him from mine revenues for protective expenses. Clause 9 transferred operational control immediately upon registration. Clause 12 defined historical burdens as mine obligations. But my amendment redirected misrepresented liabilities to the misrepresenting parties. And now the ring showed exactly who had shaped each clause. The registrar's voice dropped. Lady Damaris, state your claim clearly. This was the dangerous part. The engagement chain still restrained unsupported accusations. If I spoke beyond evidence, it could silence me. So I used the cleanest weapon in the legal world. A request for records. I request royal inspection under Article 12 of the Mining Purity Code, based on beneficiary conflict, title misrepresentation, and probable concealed cursed stone contamination tied to Obsidian Ridge Mine. The chain tightened. My oath core held. I placed Tavia's gray dust sample on the table. And I submit trace residue delivered from a public archive map seal associated with House Voss's sealed boundary request. Tavia's head bowed over her ledger. No one looked at her. Perfect. The registrar lifted the dust with a verification seal. The seal turned violet. The hall erupted. Not screaming. Nobles rarely scream at first. They murmur, calculate, deny, and search for exits. Registrar Maeve's face became carved stone. Cursed stone residue. Edran raised both hands. Residue can come from any mining site. True, I said. That is why I am not asking for judgment. I am asking for inspection. Lady Usabit stepped forward. High Registrar, this is an outrageous ambush by an unstable miner attempting to avoid a lawful alliance. There it was. The fitness petition. She produced it from her sleeve. Of course she did. 12 pages, pre-drafted, sealed by a private healer, likely claiming emotional volatility, memory confusion, resistance to beneficial marriage, and inherited instability. The old Damaris would have broken right there. Because it was one thing to be trapped, another to see the cage labeled as kindness. My hands trembled. I placed them flat on the table. The registrar accepted the petition. Edran's confidence returned by inches. Merrick smiled again. Lady Usabit said, For everyone's comfort, House Voss requests immediate protective custody until examination. Protective custody. 2 words, infinite abuse. The chain tightened around my wrist with enough force to make the cracked link glow. My oath core spun once. The contract rose in my mind as structure. Fitness petition, dependent on alliance validity. Alliance validity, dependent on title authority. Title authority disputed. Liability, dispute triggers inspection priority. Inspection priority suspends custodial remedies. The path was narrow, but it existed. I looked at the registrar. Honored registrar, under the amendment signed by Lord Edran Voss, Merrick Thorn, and Lord Haven Thorn, any party who misrepresented authority or concealed contamination assumes attached penalties without recourse to me or my maternal estate. Yes, he said slowly, until inspection resolves whether such misrepresentation occurred. Would granting Lord Voss protective custody create a conflict of interest by allowing a potentially liable party to control the beneficiary and evidence source? The hall went silent. A silver line shot through my core, so bright my knees nearly buckled. Milestone 4. Public legal interpretation under oath pressure. Registrar Maeve stared at me for a long moment. Then one corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. Almost. Yes, he said, it would. Lady Usabit's face hardened. This is procedural nonsense. No, the registrar said. This is procedure. And just like that, the room shifted. Not in my favor exactly, but away from theirs. That was enough. The royal inspection seal activated at the 5th bell. 6 crown mages appeared through the archive gate wearing white gloves and deeply unhappy expressions. Inspectors are the same in every world. They do not enjoy surprises, but they enjoy being lied to even less. Registrar Maeve suspended the registration for 3 hours. 3 hours was not long. It was enough. The inspectors requested boundary maps, waste permits, mine ledgers, transfer documents, healer complaints, and all sealed Voss archive pages concerning Obsidian Ridge. House Voss objected 12 times. House Thorn objected 7. The registrar denied all 19. Each denial strengthened something in my oath core, not because I was winning, but because each one clarified the structure of obligation. Contracts were no longer flat to me. They were living systems of pressure and release. Every contradiction had weight. Every hidden liability had temperature. Every signature carried a scent of intent. That sounds poetic. It was mostly nauseating. Tavia slipped me a cup of water when nobody important was watching. "You're shaking," she whispered. "I'm cultivating. You look like you're about to faint. Both can be true." She moved a ledger to block me from view for 10 seconds. A loyal ally again does not need a sword. Lord Edran tried to approach me twice. The first time, the registrar's assistant blocked him. The second time, Lena appeared from nowhere carrying a tray of ink bottles and accidentally spilled one across the floor between us. Merrick cursed at her. I looked at him. "Careful," I said. "Mistreating witnesses during a royal inspection looks nervous." He stepped back. Lena stared at the floor, hiding a tiny smile. By the 6th bell, the first sealed page opened. By the 7th, the whole new House Voss had filed disposal reports that did not match refinery output. By the 8th, the inspectors found 3 withdrawn worker complaints tied to my mother's mine. By the 9th, one of the crown mages returned from the archive, gate holding a blackened survey charm inside a glass sphere. The charm was cracked and leaking faint violet smoke. "Recovered from sealed boundary map chamber," the mage said. "Residue matches illegal curse stone dumping." Edran said, "That proves nothing about me." Lady Usabit closed her eyes and understood what nephew did not. It did not need to prove everything yet. It only needed to trigger the amendment. Registrar Maeve turned to the contract. "Lord Edran Voss, did you sign this alliance representing that transfer of obsidian ridge mine carried no concealed contamination liabilities?" Edran's jaw worked. "I signed standard documents prepared by counsel." "Did you know House Voss had historical access to tunnels adjoining that mine?" "I know many things about family holdings." That was not the question. I was not responsible for operations 12 years ago. Also not the question. I almost admired the registrar. Dry, precise, merciless. Merrick tried a different path. "High Registrar, even if House Voss has some unrelated waste issue, House Thorn cannot be liable. We never owned the mine. We merely stewarded it." My father slowly turned toward him. Merrick realized 1 second too late what he had said. I felt my oath core brighten. There are moments in every legal disaster where a person thinks they are escaping one trap by diving into another. Merrick had just admitted House Thorn did not own the mine. In public, under Crown seal, during registration, while having signed a contract warranting transfer authority. Registrar Maeve's gaze moved to him. "Then, why did you sign as representing party for House Thorn's transfer authority?" Merrick went red. "As family steward." "Were you authorized by the registered beneficiary?" He looked at me. The hall looked at me. My wrist chain hummed. I lifted my hand, palm up. "No." The chain tried to tighten. The cracked link split. A sound like a tiny bell rang through the hall. Everyone saw it. The engagement chain had failed to enforce silence. Not because I broke it by force. Because the contract had no right to silence a truthful denial of forged consent. The 5th silver milestone hit. My oath core unfolded. Not larger. Deeper. The silver lines along my meridians connected into a lattice from wrist to heart, heart to throat, throat to brow. The world sharpened again, but this time I did not sway. For the first time in this life, my body recognized the power as mine. Merrick whispered, "What are you?" I answered honestly. "Tired." Tavia coughed into her sleeve. The registrar ordered signature verification. That was when Merrick began to panic. Signature verification in this world was not handwriting analysis. It was worse, Oath paper remembered intent. A forged consent mark did not merely look different, it carried the wrong mana pressure. The crown seal passed over my alleged consent. It turned black. The hall inhaled as one body. Registrar Maeve's voice went cold. Forged beneficiary consent. My father stepped away from Merrick. Cowardly, but predictable. Merrick raised both hands. Father ordered the transfer. My father said, I authorized negotiation, not forgery. Family. So warm. So reliable. Edran saw the Thorn side collapsing and made his own desperate move. This is a domestic matter for House Thorn. House Voss entered in good faith. The ring pulsed. Silver beneficiary lines from clauses 12, 14, and 17 flared toward him. The registrar looked at the glowing threads. Good faith is unlikely. Lady Usabit finally spoke again. High Registrar, House Voss requests private settlement. There it was. The first offer. Private settlement is what powerful people ask for when public truth develops teeth. Registrar Maeve looked at me. As registered beneficiary, Lady Damaris may accept private settlement regarding civil claims. Criminal oath violations remain Crown jurisdiction. Edran's eyes fixed on me. Now he looked at me like a person. Not because he respected me. Because I had become expensive. He softened his voice. Damaris, this has become unpleasant. No one wanted you harmed. I looked at the fitness petition, still lying beside the contract. No. His face tightened. I can offer protection, he said. A separate residence, a personal allowance. We continue the alliance in name only until matters settle. You tried to use a forged consent mark to acquire my mine, bury your family's contamination debt, declare me unstable, and lock me away before winter. The chain did not tighten. Truth had become safer than silence. Edran swallowed. I was advised poorly. Lady Usabit's face went blank. Amazing. He had lasted less than 1 hour before throwing his own aunt toward the wolves. Merrick tried next. Damaris, we are family. I looked at him for a long moment. The old Damaris stirred in me then, not as weakness, as memory. She had wanted Merrick to love her once. Not much, just enough to stop being cruel when no one watched, enough to call her sister when she was sick, enough to not sell her to a man with a legal cage ready. I let that grief pass through me. Then I said, you forged my consent. He flinched. You laughed while I signed the amendment that ruined you. He flinched again. And you did not read it. That one hurt him most. Good. The inspectors returned with the final piece at the 10th bell. A ledger. Voss refinery output, disposal cost estimates, and payments routed through Thorn stewardship accounts. My father closed his eyes. Merrick stared at the ledger like it had betrayed him. Lady Usabit whispered something very unladylike. Registrar Maeve read silently for 4 minutes. Then he placed the ledger on the oath table. Preliminary finding, he said. The hall went so quiet, even the floating seals stopped humming. Obsidian Ridge Mine is confirmed maternal estate property under Vale Trust. House Thorn held stewardship only. Consent transfer was forged. House Voss possessed undisclosed historical contamination exposure connected to cursed stone waste access through adjacent tunnels. The amendment signed 48 hours ago applies. Edran took 1 step back. Merrick did too. The registrar continued. Personal assumption of historical liabilities attaches to signatories who misrepresented ownership, concealed contamination, or induced transfer. Civil cleanup burden estimated at initial minimum of 800,000 crown marks pending full survey. Royal fines to be assessed separately. Criminal oath penalties opened against Lord Edran Voss, Merrick Thorn, and any additional participating signatories. 800,000. The number landed like a building falling. Edran actually sat down. Merrick looked like he might be sick. My father gripped the table. High Registrar, House Thorn cannot absorb. The amendment specifies personal assumption, Registrar Maeve said. Not House assumption unless House participation is established. My father stopped talking. Marek turned on him. You can't let them put this on me. My father did not look at him. That was the moment Marek understood how disposable people feel. I wish I could say it brought me joy. It brought me balance. There is a difference. The registrar lifted the contract. Registration of marriage alliance is denied. Engagement chain is void. Custodial petition is rejected. Maternal mineral rights remain with Lady Damaris Thorn under veil trust protection until her 18th birthday, with Crown supervision effective immediately. The silver chain fell from my wrist in 12 broken links. They hit the marble one by one. Tiny sounds. Huge consequences. My oath core drank the released mana, and the silver lattice inside me settled into place. Every contract mage in the hall felt it. I knew because all 3 gray-robed mages stepped back at the same time. Registrar Maeve looked at my wrist, then my face. You have cultivated an oath core. Marek whispered, she has no talent. I picked up one broken chain link. No, I had no talent for the things you valued. The collapse did not finish in the hall. Consequences rarely do. They spread. By sunset, House Voss's West accounts were frozen pending contamination assessment. By midnight, 3 minor noble investors withdrew from Edran's refinery expansion. By morning, 2 newspapers carried careful phrases like irregular registration, royal inspection, and historic liability review, which meant everyone in the capital knew exactly enough to gossip safely. Lord Edran sent flowers. White roses. No note. I had Lena return them to the Voss townhouse, with a copy of the mining purity code tied to the stems. She came back glowing. I gave them to the front steward, she said. He read the title and dropped the vase. Excellent delivery. She tried not to smile. Tavia visited under official authority the next afternoon. Crown supervision gave me temporary residence in an archive guest room, which was smaller than House Thorn's East Suite but warmer by about 10 degrees and free of Marek. Luxury. She brought 3 ledgers, 2 legal notices, and 1 meat pie wrapped in brown paper. I thought oath core cultivators might eat, she said. Constantly, apparently. I took the pie. Best meal of my second life. Tavia sat across from me at the little table. Without the ceremony hall around her, she looked younger, tired, determined. Ink still stained her fingers. You terrified them, she said. Good. You terrified me a little too. Less good, but understandable. She opened the first ledger. The registrar asked me to assist with your maternal trust reconstruction. Asked. Assigned. Is that better? It comes with hazard pay. Then yes. We worked for 6 hours. Not revenge work. Repair work. That mattered. The mine was still contaminated. Workers had still been exposed. Creek water needed testing. Old claims needed review. Families who had withdrawn complaints deserved compensation. The Vale Trust had income, but not enough to cleanse 12 years of Cursestone waste alone. So I did what any responsible person does after surviving a predatory contract. I drafted a better one. Not for Edran. For the Crown. A supervised remediation agreement. The Crown would fund immediate containment and recover costs from liable parties after final judgment. The Vale Trust would grant temporary inspection access, but not ownership. Worker claims would be prioritized before noble reimbursement. Any recovered fines tied to illegal dumping would allocate 15% to local healers, 20% to creek restoration, and 10% to a minor family relief fund. Tavia read it twice. This is unusually specific. Vague contracts are where rich people store knives. She nodded, as if that was going into her personal religion. When I wrote the worker relief clause, another silver line formed inside my core, softer than the others, warmer. That surprised me. Clause cultivation did not only reward traps and contradictions. It rewarded precision, aligned with obligation. Good to know. Power that only grows through exploitation would eventually make me no better than them. Power that grows through clarity, that I could live with. On the third day after the failed registration, Edran requested an audience. Registrar Maeve allowed it under supervision because he apparently enjoyed educational suffering. Edran arrived without his blue ceremonial robes. He wore gray. He looked older by 5 years and less handsome without certainty lighting his face. I sat at the archive table with Tavia to my left and 2 crown seals floating behind me. He hated that. Good. Lady Damaris, he said. Lord Voss. He glanced at Tavia. Can we speak privately? No. His mouth tightened. I wanted to apologize. You may do that publicly. He inhaled slowly. I was wrong to trust family counsel without reviewing every detail. There it was again. The apology that apologizes to itself. I leaned back. You signed a custodial petition before registration. He looked away. You prepared to declare me unstable. I was told you were fragile. You met me once. I was told. You believed what profited you. That stopped him. The crown seals hummed softly. He lowered his voice. The fines will ruin my branch. Yes. My aunt may face oath trial. Yes. Marek is claiming House Voss manipulated him. I'm sure he is. Edran's mask cracked. Do you want me destroyed? I considered that. The easy answer was yes. The honest answer was more useful. I want the mine cleaned. I want the workers compensated. I want my mother's estate restored. I want every forged document disclosed. I want you legally prevented from using marriage, guardianship, or fitness petitions as acquisition tools ever again. He stared at me. That is not destruction, I said. That is containment. For some reason, that frightened him more. He placed a velvet pouch on the table. Tavia's brows rose. 50,000 crown marks, he said. Immediate personal payment. Withdraw civil objection to the alliance and support a limited settlement. No marriage, no custody, just a statement that I acted without malicious intent. 50,000. A life-changing amount for the old Damaris. A cheap exit for him. I opened the pouch, poured 1 coin onto the table, and touched it with my ring. No magic. Just money. I slid it back. No. His face hardened. Do not be naive. The crown will take years, lawyers will eat half, inspectors can be influenced, public sympathy fades. True. That made him pause. I smiled a little. That is why my answer is still no. You cannot fight every noble house. I don't need to. I only need to make this contract famous. Tavia made a small strangled sound that might have been admiration. Edran understood then. Noble families did not fear morality. They feared precedent. If the story spread, if every minor heir, illegitimate daughter, ward, steward, and neglected beneficiary learned that a liability amendment could reverse a predatory transfer, then Edran's humiliation would become a tool. Tools travel. He stood. You are making enemies. I inherited those. I'm making records. He left without bowing. Rude. But honest. Marek's visit came 2 days later and was much less controlled. He arrived in a formal coat with dark circles under his eyes and desperation sweating through his expensive collar. My father had not come. Of course not. House Thorn had begun distancing itself from him through very careful letters. Marek had gone from favored son to individual actor in 48 hours. A brutal demotion. He stared at Tavia. Leave. She looked at me. I shook my head. She stayed. Marek's jaw flexed. You owe me at least family privacy. I owe you nothing with the word family attached. He stepped closer, then stopped when the crown seal brightened. Good seal. Damaris, he said, and for the first time in years he used my name without contempt. I made mistakes. You committed forgery. I was pressured. You enjoyed it. He looked down. That was new. I didn't think it would hurt you, he said. I laughed once before I could stop myself. He flinched. Marek, you signed a document that would hand me to a man who planned to put me under custodial control. I didn't know about the convent. The oath seal behind me turned yellow. Partial truth. Interesting. You knew about the fitness petition. He said nothing. Yellow deepened. I nodded. There it is. He swallowed. Father said it was necessary. He said you would ruin the family if you got control of the mine. I might have. His eyes lifted, hopeful. I am starting with the accounting ledgers. Hope died. I did not enjoy that either. Not exactly. But I needed him to understand that forgiveness was not a document he could forge. He leaned both hands on the table. I can help. I know where Father keeps the private stewardship accounts. Now we were somewhere useful. In exchange for what? Ask the Crown to reduce personal penalties. No. His face twisted. Then why would I help you? Because those accounts may show Father ordered the forgery. Because cooperation before full trial is better than panic after conviction. Because for once in your life, telling the truth is the only option that helps you. He stared at me with real hatred then. Not the casual kind from childhood. The cornered kind. You sound like them, he said. Like who? Officials, auditors, people who pretend rules are clean. That landed closer than I wanted. Because rules are not clean. Contracts do not save people by existing. Laws do not enforce themselves. Institutions are made of people, and people can be bought, bullied, exhausted, or bored. I knew that from Earth. I knew that here. So I said, rules are not clean, but they are handles. People like you survive by making sure people like me have nothing to grab. Marek looked away first. Quietly, he said, there is a black ledger in Father's hunting room, behind the second stag head. He paid Voss agents through stewardship maintenance funds. I signed 2 withdrawals. Tavia wrote every word. The seal behind me turned white. Truth. Marek looked smaller when he left. Not redeemed. Not forgiven. Just smaller. That was enough. That night, I dreamed of Earth for the first time. Fluorescent lights, bad coffee, a glass conference room, my old hands highlighting indemnity language while someone in a custom suit told me not to be difficult. I woke in the archive guest room with snowlight on the wall and silver lines under my skin. 2 lives. Same lesson. People who profit from your silence will always call your clarity aggression. The Black Ledger broke House Thorn's defense. Not immediately. Rich families do not collapse like towers. They collapse like rotten shelves, one support at a time, while everyone insists the sagging is normal. First, my father claimed the ledger was fabricated. Then Tavia produced archive ink dating. Then he claimed the payments were routine maintenance. Then the Crown inspectors matched 3 payments to Voss tunnel crews. Then he claimed Marek acted independently. Then Marek, discovering the spiritual beauty of self-preservation, testified that my father had ordered the withdrawals and promised him a portion of the Voss marriage settlement. By the end of the week, House Thorn had offered me 4 things. A formal apology. A restored place at the family table. A winter residence. And 3,000 crown marks for emotional distress. I asked Tavia if nobles always priced years of abuse at less than a carriage team. She said, only when they think they can negotiate down. I declined all 4. Instead, I made a counteroffer. House Thorn would resign stewardship of the Vale Trust immediately, provide full access to 17 years of mine records, fund temporary housing for affected worker families, and publicly acknowledge my mother's sole mineral title. In exchange, I would not oppose Crown approval of a structured repayment plan instead of immediate asset seizure. My father sent back one sentence. "You forget your place." I sent back 42 pages. He signed on page 43. That was the moment I understood my oath core had changed me in ways beyond magic. In my old life, I had often mistaken endurance for professionalism. I had sat in rooms where powerful people interrupted me, dismissed me, praised me for being reasonable, and punished me when reasonable meant no. I had swallowed anger until it became insomnia. Damaris Thorn had done the same thing with prettier furniture and worse laws. But now, each precise boundary strengthened me. Each clean clause steadied my breath. Each refusal based on fact, instead of fear, made the silver lattice in my body brighter. Power Milestone 6 came during the Vale Trust hearing. It was smaller than the registration ceremony, but more important to me. No crowd of gossiping nobles, no dramatic chain, no beautiful villains smiling across the table. Just a tribunal chamber, 3 crown trustees, 26 boxes of records, and my mother's portrait propped against the wall because I insisted her face belonged in the room. The senior trustee, Mistress Halen, reviewed my proposed trust reconstruction. "You are 17, she said. "Yes." "You have no formal contract mage license." "Correct." "You have an emerging oath core of unknown classification." "Also correct." "You are asking the Crown to recognize you as interim interpretive authority over a contaminated mineral estate worth negative value until remediation succeeds." Accurate summary. Tavia closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. Mistress Halen studied me. "Why would you want this burden?" I looked at my mother's portrait. The old Damaris remembered her laugh only faintly. She remembered warm hands better, a song about mountain rain, the smell of ink and lavender, then absence. I said, because everyone who wanted the mine treated it like a shield for their crimes. Someone should treat it like a responsibility. The room was quiet for a long moment. The trustee signed. My oath core warmed. Not with triumph. With alignment. The Vale Trust was placed under temporary Crown supervision with me as beneficiary advocate and Tavia as assigned contract scribe. Lena entered my service by her own choice with wages paid from trust funds. The first worker relief payments went out 11 days after the failed registration. 11 days. Not justice complete, but justice started. Edran's situation worsened. Final inspection found 7 illegal dumping sites, 4 false disposal permits, and 2 bribed surveyors. His aunt, Lady Usabbott, had not created the original scheme, but she had concealed it during the marriage transfer. Her legal license was suspended pending oath trial. Edran lost heir status. That one broke him more than money. Men raised as first sons often survive debt better than demotion. House Voss announced that Lord Edran had stepped back from public duties to reflect. This meant his cousins had locked him out of decisions and given him a countryside estate with poor heating. Marek's consequences were uglier in a quieter way. The Crown charged him for forged consent, misrepresentation, and illegal inducement of transfer. He avoided prison by testifying against my father and agreeing to 10 years of monitored repayment from his personal inheritance. He also lost Thorn's succession preference. I heard he complained that I had ruined his future. That was funny. He had offered mine to a convent before winter. My father lasted longest. He had old friends, old debts owed to him, and the survival instincts of a man who had spent 20 years turning cruelty into policy. He tried to paint me as manipulated by Crown officials, then as corrupted by my mother's ring, then as unstable from sudden cultivation. Unfortunately for him, sudden cultivation was not a crime. Forgery still was. The public acknowledgement of my mother's title was printed on the first day of thaw. I held the notice in my hands outside the archive, watching snow melt along the steps. Tavia stood beside me with her cloak pulled tight. "Your mother would have liked this," she said. "You didn't know her." "No, but I know good drafting." I laughed. It startled me. Not because it was loud. Because it was easy. For 6 weeks, my life had been contracts, hearings, inspections, nausea, silver mana, and controlled rage. I had forgotten what it felt like to laugh without checking who might punish me for it. Lena came running up the steps with a basket of hot chestnuts and news that the First Creek ward had turned clear. Clear, I asked. Inspector Clear, she said, which is apparently less cheerful but more official. Tavia took a chestnut. Inspector Clear is better than cheerful Clear. I am learning so much about bureaucracy. We stood there in the cold, the three of us, eating chestnuts like victory could be held in burned fingertips and salt. A carriage stopped at the bottom of the archive steps. For one brief, exhausting second, I expected another threat. Instead, Registrar Maeve stepped out. He climbed the steps slowly, leaning on a black cane topped with a silver seal. "Lady Damaris," he said. I bowed. "High Registrar." He looked at the notice in my hand. "You have caused a great deal of paperwork." "My condolences." "Do not be. It has been years since paperwork was this satisfying." Tavia made a noise, suspiciously close to a laugh. The registrar handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a provisional invitation to study for Crown contract, mage certification. I stared at it. The old Damaris had never been invited to study anything except silence. "What is this?" I asked, because intelligent people sometimes ask obvious questions when their throat closes. "A path," Registrar Maeve said. "Not a gift. You would need to pass examinations. 12 written, 4 oral, 3 practical. Failure rate is 71%. Comforting. You appear to enjoy difficult reading." "That may be trauma. Most expertise is." I looked down at the seal. A Crown contract mage. Not a wife. Not a ward. Not a hidden liability. A person with standing. Tavia leaned closer. "You should accept." Lena nodded so hard her hood slipped. I thought of Earth, the life where I had known contracts but not magic, the conference rooms, the exhaustion. The final night I remembered before waking here, rain against my apartment window, an unread message from a client, my body so tired I could barely lift my phone. Had I died, fallen asleep, been chosen, punished, recycled? I still did not know. Maybe I never would. But reincarnation had not given me a sword, a system, a dragon, or a convenient destiny. It had given me a second chance inside a body everyone had underestimated, and a world foolish enough to put its power in writing. I looked at the registrar. "I accept." My oath core pulsed once, clear and bright. Not finished. Not full. Ready. 3 months after the registration disaster, I visited Obsidian Ridge Mine for the first time. The road climbed through black pines and gray stone, past frozen creeks and warning wards shaped like small brass birds. The mine entrance cut into the mountain like a dark mouth, but the air around it no longer tasted metallic. Crown containment teams had sealed the worst tunnels. Healers had set up a clinic in the old survey house. Worker families lived in temporary cabins with clean wells, warm stoves, and actual locks on the doors. It was not beautiful. It was better than hidden. Tavia came with me as official scribe. Lena came because she had decided I could not be trusted to eat during site visits. Registrar Maeve sent 2 auditors, 1 quiet guard, and a letter reminding me that beneficiary advocates were not supposed to personally interrogate waste mages without supervision. A very specific rule. Probably my fault. At the lower ridge, I met the first miner who had filed a complaint 8 years earlier. His name was Bren Arlo, 53, One bad knee, hands like cracked leather. He brought his daughter, who had been 6 when the creek turned violet and 14 when her family stopped trusting nobles entirely. He looked at me for a long time. "You're Marin Vale's girl," he said. "Yes. She paid my wife's healer bill once. Quietly. Your Thorn people denied it later." My throat tightened. "That sounds like her." He pointed at the mine. "Can you fix it?" Honest question. No flattery. No court language. No expectation that I would save everyone with one glowing contract. I appreciated that. "Not quickly," I said. "Not cheaply. Not alone. But the people who used it as a dumping pit are paying now, and the Crown is watching because the case embarrassed too many important families to ignore." He grunted. "That's the first noble answer I've heard that didn't smell perfumed." "I'm only half noble." "That explains it." Lena turned away to hide her smile. At the mine entrance, I placed my mother's ring against the first remediation agreement posted on the ward board. The clauses shimmered. Worker safety. Waste containment. Water testing every 6 days. Public reporting. Emergency healer fund. Whistleblower protection. That last one was mine. The beneficiary threads spread not to one noble, not to one house, not to one greedy heir, but outward. Workers, healers, creek wardens, the Vale Trust, the Crown inspectors, even future buyers who would know what they were buying before they signed. My oath core warmed until silver light ran down my fingers. Tavia whispered, "Damaris." "I see it." "What?" "A contract that is not a trap." The words came out softer than I intended. I had spent 2 lives treating contracts like loaded crossbows, and often I was right. But standing there, in cold mountain air, watching miners read safety clauses written in plain language, I felt the other possibility. A contract could be a fence around power. A lantern in a dark transaction. A memory that could speak when frightened people could not. No wonder tyrants loved bad drafting. Clarity was dangerous. On the ride back, we stopped at the ridge overlook. Below us, the mine road curved toward the valley. Snowmelt flashed in the creek like strips of glass. Tavia handed me a folded newspaper. "You may want to see page 3. I unfolded it. The headline was not about me exactly. It was about the Royal Archive issuing new guidance on marriage-linked asset transfers, beneficiary consent verification, contamination liability, and custodial conflict review. Buried in the 3rd paragraph was the phrase now being repeated across the capital. The Thorn Voss precedent. I stared at it. Tavia watched my face. "You've become case law." "That sounds contagious." "It is." She smiled. I thought about Edran in his cold countryside estate, Merrick under repayment watch, my father signing away control piece by piece, Lady Ussabit preparing for oath trial, and every noble contract drafter in the capital suddenly adding liability review to their checklists. I did not need them dead. I did not need them screaming. I needed them careful. Careful people do less damage. Not none, I was not that naive. But less. When we returned to the archive, a stack of letters waited in my room. Some were insults. Some were proposals. 3 were from girls in noble houses asking how to verify maternal trusts. 1 was from a ward whose uncle wanted her to sign a protective stewardship agreement. Another was from a merchant widow whose late husband's guild partners had hidden debts inside a remarriage settlement. Tavia read over my shoulder. "Well," she said, "you wanted difficult reading." I touched the stack. My oath core answered like a bell. Not because of revenge. Because of work. That night, I wrote until the candle burned low. I drafted templates, warnings, questions to ask before signing, clauses to avoid, records to request, rights that sounded boring until someone needed them. Lena fell asleep in the chair by the hearth. Tavia corrected my citation format in the margins with ruthless little marks. At midnight, I opened a blank page and wrote my own name at the top. Damaris Thorn. Then I crossed out Thorn. Not because blood could be erased. Because ownership could. Damaris Vale. 17. Reincarnator. Illegitimate daughter by their rules. Beneficiary by my mother's. Oathcore cultivator by accident, stubbornness, and exact wording. I still had enemies. I still had examinations. I still had a contaminated mine worth less than nothing until we finished cleaning it. But I also had my name, my mother's ring, 2 allies who had chosen me without chains, and a kind of power nobody in House Thorn had known how to measure. The last thing I did before sleeping was place the broken engagement link beside my study lamp. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. In my first life, I learned that fine print could ruin people. In this one, I learned it could ruin the people who counted on nobody reading it.